What up, my fellow entrepreneurs? Coach Chad here, CEO of the Next Level Coaching Academy, and welcome into the next episode of the Fit CEO podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how there once was a time where I legitimately thought I was crazy. And I still think I'm crazy to this day, but that's okay. I've accepted my crazy. And if you are an entrepreneur who maybe doesn't feel comfortable in your own skin yet as an entrepreneur, if you are an entrepreneur and maybe you think you're crazy. Maybe you think you're different than everybody else. Maybe you question yourself a lot. And like I said, you just don't feel very secure in your own skin yet as an entrepreneur. Then this is going to be a podcast for you. I started entrepreneurship at a very young age, at the age of 19. And I legitimately thought there was something psychologically wrong with me. And we'll get more into that story. But I feel like I had a really good learning lesson from it all. It was definitely a very low point in my life. It was definitely a very hard, probably one of the hardest points in my young adult life. I'm only 27 years old, but so I don't have, as much life experience as, a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old. But in my 27 years of living, this is definitely probably one of the more difficult times in my life. And this would be considered me getting vulnerable. But not why I'm sharing it. I'm sharing it because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that feel these feelings, but I don't think there's enough entrepreneurs who feel the feelings and have not overcome, but have accepted them and to actually talk about them openly and honestly. And that's my goal. I want to talk about this openly and honestly, and hopefully it helps some people. So let's get into it. All right, I'm going to start with I'm just going to tell my story about this. All right. So I started when I was 15. I didn't start entrepreneurship when I was 15, but when I was 15, I started really getting into personal development. And I don't know if you got into personal development at such a young age, but and to be honest, I'm not even sure how I got into it at such a young age. But I started listening to, Tony Robbins, Ray Lewis, believe it or not, was a big one for me. I listened to a ton of Ray Lewis videos. And at the age of 15, and it probably all came back to sports, but at the age of 15, I really started delving into, motivational speakers, motivational talks, motivational videos, and really started to dip my toe into that personal development world. And like I said, I don't really know why I got into it so young, but I did. If I had to come up with an answer, it's probably because I had an affinity for sports, and I always, at a very young age, I always wanted to be the best. I always told myself I was going to do something with my life, and my life was going to be extremely meaningful, and that I one day would make a massive, massive impact. And I'm still in the very early stages of hopefully one day fulfilling that fantasy. But I started really having all these questions at the age of 15. And anytime you dive into personal development, anytime you dive into, trying to understand yourself, you start asking yourself a lot of questions like, what is the purpose of life? What is my purpose? What do I stand for? Right. And when you think about these at a very young age, the age, 15 or so, it can cause a lot of anxiety, right? It can cause a lot of stress. It can put a lot of pressure on a young mind. And I would say at 18, the age of 18, I started to have some mental breaks. I would say I started to have I started to really question myself, and it became to the point where it was probably very obsessive and compulsive. I would have very irrational thoughts, and I would go down these very dark rabbit holes mentally. And it all stemmed from just asking myself very deep questions and really trying to figure out who I am as a person and as a man. And I would say, once again, at the age of 18, I was a senior in high school, and the questions I started asking myself started to become a lot darker than when I was the age of 18 or 15. When I was the age of 15, like I said, I was just dipping my toe into personal development. And, I also was dipping my toe into working out for the first time. And a lot of the questions were very positive, right? Like, what do I want my life to look like? What are my goals? What are my aspirations? And whatever filled my mind in return to those questions was very positive. Well, like I said, at the age of 18, that started to flip, and I still had the same curious mind, but the questions I were asking myself was a lot more negative. I started to judge myself a lot more in not a very positive light. because I noticed a lot of my friends were not really into the things that I were into, right? And I was into personal development, and I was into, having big goals and aspirations. And I started to question myself, like, what is wrong with me? Was the common question, and actually probably not the common, it was the foundation of where all the other questions that I would ask myself came from, is what is wrong with me? So at the age of 15, the question I asked myself was, how can I give my life meaning? And everything came back positive. At the age of 18, it was all, what is wrong with me? So that was the question I was asking myself. And I would try to find answers to those questions, right? Anytime you ask a question to yourself, your brain's going to try to find answers. And I would really go down some very dark rabbit holes, and it would cause crippling anxiety every single day. I would go to school. My teachers started questioning if there was something wrong with me, like, is Chad okay? They would ask my parents. And really, I was just paralyzed by fear. I was paralyzed by anxiety. I was constantly self-analyzing myself, trying to identify and answer that question, what is wrong with me? And I would self-diagnose myself with bipolar disorder. I would self-diagnose myself with schizophrenia. I would self-diagnose myself with all of these very intense and very serious mental illnesses. And when you start doing that, like I said, you really start digging yourself a deep hole, because every little move that I made in my life, like every little thing I did in my life, I would self-analyze, and I'd say, why am I doing that? Is the reason I'm doing that because I'm schizophrenic? Is the reason I'm doing that because I'm bipolar? Is the reason I'm doing that because this, because that, because whatever? And I really started just having my mind was not grounded at all. And it was a very unpleasant way to live. And it got so bad and so crippling that I started to take myself, because I was 18 at this point. I would start taking myself to psychiatrists and therapists, and I would ask them the same question. I would say, these are my symptoms. What's wrong with me? Do I have this disorder? Do I have that disorder? And I believe I took myself, I don't know the exact number, 4 to 8 is probably the range. I took myself to 4 to 8 different psychiatrists or therapists. And when I asked them that question, I always got the same answer back. The answer I got is, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just being a little obsessive. You're being a little compulsive. You have a lot of anxiety. Which in hindsight 2020, I'm very grateful for the therapist telling me that, because, it could have been very easy for a therapist to prey on me and say, yeah, you're right, you do have that, and then subscribe me to medication. And then I could have gone down that loophole. So I'm very grateful for the therapist that I did have, because they told me the truth, and they identified the problem truthfully and not to line their own pockets. So that's a little aside, but I'm grateful to have that, because I know there's not everybody is as congruent in their field, in that field, as the individuals that I was blessed to work with. But to make a long story short, I would go to therapist after therapist after therapist, psychiatrist after psychiatrist after psychiatrist, and ask that question, what is wrong with me? And share with them my symptoms. And they said, Chad, you're literally just anxious. There's nothing wrong with you. And I didn't want to accept that answer. And this really bled into freshman year of college as well. I had a good group of friends, and I played lacrosse at a college, but I felt so insecure, and I felt so unsure of myself. And I got so desperate to the point where anybody that got close to me, I would ask them, do you think I have XYZ disorder? And I would ask all my friends the same thing. And, I would even, and I feel so bad saying this, but my grandma has bipolar disorder. And that's why bipolar disorder was the one that came to my mind, is because I thought it was genetically passed down to me from my grandma. But the part that was so sad is I also chose my dad as a victim. I started telling my dad that he has bipolar disorder, and that's the reason why I have it, when I don't have it. I've never been told that I have bipolar disorder. But that's how bad and how deep of a negative cycle I was in, is I started making my dad a victim, and I started telling him that he had bipolar disorder and he's the reason why I have it. And that is so freaking unfair and so selfish of me. And I feel very bad that I made him feel that way. My dad and I have a good relationship now, and during that time, we definitely did not have a great relationship. I would say we had a rocky relationship. But yeah, just trying to paint the picture for you of how much of a dark place I was in. Yeah, so let's get into the learning lesson here. So like I said, I'll finish out the story and then we'll get into the learning lesson. So I went through freshman year. I was very unsure. Honestly, now in hindsight 2020, I would say I was very unsure my whole college career. I went to five different colleges. Is that right? I went to Western New England, I went to Springfield, I went to UConn, I went to WestConn. I went to four different colleges in 5 years. So I went to four colleges in 5 years. And the reason I did that is because I was always trying to just I was searching for, who am I? What is wrong with me? I was still trying to identify myself. And it wasn't really until I found entrepreneurship that I actually felt sane. It wasn't until I started my online fitness coaching business, which I started to try to make that a thing in 2015. And I'm not going to go into the story of me growing that, but if you guys are familiar with the story, I really started going full-time around 2018. So those 3 years from 2015 to 2018, I was in college, and I was, doing school, and I was doing this business on the side, and I was able to build up the business to a full-time place where I graduated college and, never had to get a job. I just started online fitness coaching and have been an entrepreneur ever since. But when I started entrepreneurship, I fell in love with it. And, this is why I'm so grateful and blessed to do what I do, is because I truly, truly love entrepreneurship. And it is, I hate saying like it saved my life. Like, it didn't save my life, but it certainly made my life a hell of a lot better than what it was. Because since the age of 15, I was searching for meaning. And like I said, from 15 to 18, it was all positive. From 18 to, I would say, about 22, it was pretty negative, and I was going down a really dark place, and I felt really lost. And then I found entrepreneurship, and everything changed. I became obsessed with it, and a lot of that energy that I was putting towards my negative thoughts, I was able to turn around and redirect that energy to entrepreneurship, and build this. And this is still small and it's still the beginning, but and like I said, I don't want to say entrepreneur saved my life, but it really set me on a good trajectory, one that I'm very happy with, and one that I'm very secure with, and one that I feel I have true meaning and purpose in life. And I don't suffer from those same negative thoughts that I did at that younger age. And now my thoughts are consumed with how can I continue to help more people and grow the business. And getting into the learning lesson here is, I think, a lot. And the reason I wanted to create the podcast is, I think a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from this. I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel alienated. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs feel isolated. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs ask themselves, what is wrong with me? Why am I not like everybody else? And it wasn't until I realized that this was my gift. It wasn't until I realized that this was my passion, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, that all of that negativity dissipated. And I think the unique gift that entrepreneurs have is we are high energy individuals. I've been told my whole entire life that I had, from grade school, that I have ADHD. And, I used to always get in trouble as a kid. And I honestly really sucked at school. I really did. And it wasn't because I was stupid. It's just because I just didn't pay attention. I didn't find it stimulating. So I didn't pay attention to it. But getting back to my point here, I really believe that entrepreneurs have, a different genetic makeup. We are high energy individuals. One may classify that as ADD or ADHD or whatever, you want to put the mental label on it. I hate the mental label stuff. I think I know some of it is true, but I think a lot of it is just to line the pockets of the medical community. Getting into personal opinions here, but getting back to the point, we are high energy individuals, and we can use that energy for good, or we can use that energy for bad. And for a lot of my early adulthood, I used it for bad. And bad, I mean, it was very selfish. I was very negative. And once I found entrepreneurship, I was allowed to take that same energy and apply it to something good. And my message to entrepreneurs is, if you feel this way, once again, it's a choice in how you are using that energy. And two, it is also, you need to recognize it is also your gift. I made a podcast earlier on talking about how anxiety is my superpower, and how anxiety is just energy, and you could choose to use it as fuel, or you could choose to use it to deteriorate you. I believe that this is all the same thing. If you want to classify it as anxiety, that's fine. But I think entrepreneurs they're very high energy individuals, and they are very heady, right? They're in their head a lot. And like I said, you can use that energy for your own self-benefit or for your own self-demise. And I had that realization after I became an entrepreneur. It wasn't like I realized it and then became an entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur and then realized all the things that I am communicating to you now. So that's it. I really just wanted to share this story with you guys. Once again, hopefully it connects. If you are going through this, just know that you are not alone, and you have the choice to be able to choose where you place that energy. And that energy, wherever you place that energy, it's going to grow. I noticed the more I thought about all the negative patterns and of answering the question, what is wrong with me, the worse and worse it got, and the bigger and bigger the monster got. And then entrepreneurship distracted me from answering all those negative questions. And then I was able to shift back to the positive, and the bigger and bigger that got as well. So it's all energy at the end of the day. You get to choose where you direct it, and just know you aren't alone. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.